everybody back up here. Alrighty, we're going to move right along on our superintendent's report and item information items. Dr. Thornton, I'm going to let you handle the next couple items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first presentation is a special guest, Dr. Jeff Perry from Wise County, and the team that helped build their new schools. They went through a consolidation process, 6 high schools to 3, which we're talking about in this county as well. And they're also going to share some of the 21st century educational spaces that are in these new facilities and just share that story with us. So thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Thornton, support team, certainly do appreciate the opportunity this evening to speak to you. We have presented or prepared a packet for you at your desk, and it will correlate with the slides here. My name is Jeff Perry. I'm the Division Superintendent for Wise County. Certainly do appreciate the opportunity here this evening. Many of the experiences I believe that we had in Wise County will be similar to the experiences you will have here in Mecklenburg County as you go through the consolidation process and as we work through this. And as you can see on the first page, our school divisions are actually very similar. We have a division enrollment of approximately 6,000. We had 14 schools, 6 elementary schools, 3 middle schools. We currently now have 3 high schools, a vocational school and alternative school. Have a high school enrollment of approximately 2,000 students, and prior to 3 years ago, before we went through consolidation, we actually had 6 high schools. All of those high schools were built in the 1950s, which many of our school divisions across the United States, those schools were built in the 1950s. We had enrollment, smallest high school was 194, which is extremely small, and it went up to 540 at our largest high schools. So clearly, we had some problems that we had to address with just efficiency and being able to operate. At our smallest school, we were operating at $6,000, or at our largest school, at Central High School, we had 6,000 students, or $6,000 per student. And in our smallest school, we were paying $12,000 a student. So it cost us twice as much to educate a child at our smaller school as it did our larger school. So clearly we had some issues there. Our consolidation plan was to consolidate into 3 high schools. So we closed 3 high schools, brought all the students together. In that, we built 2 new high schools through a PPEA process, and then we renovated the 3rd. So currently we have 3 high schools, and as we went through this process, it was a very difficult process, as you can imagine. And I've told people that the most difficult animal that you'll ever kill in the entire world is a high school mascot, because it was a tough process. I graduated from Pound High School, was one of the high schools that we actually consolidated. And so it's tough going back to high school reunions at that point too. But I think what our folks did understand as we went through this process, it saved us a tremendous amount of money, and we were able to offer a world-class education, and that's what we were in this for. It was not about forcing students to live the legacy of their forefathers, but freeing them to live and create the legacy of their own future. And actually, one of our students said that in one of her testimonies, was that she was so glad that her school or old school was shut down, because now she was liberated to create her own legacy and not be forced to live the ones of her forefathers. As you can see on the next page, we have some consolidation savings, which I think is important to look at. We were able to realize about $3.7 million savings by closing these 3 high schools. And as I can relate some of these things to you, in just administrative, we were able to save $1.5 million on just principals, assistant principals, counselors, school resource officers, nurses, everything that we had to duplicate. So $1.5 million in that. We reduced the number of teachers from 160 to 144, saved nearly $1 million there. In support staff, cafeteria, custodian, in-school suspension, video, all those things for $350. Reduced the number of coaches from 165 to 114. And then operational, these next ones are very conservative in terms of operational, transportation, and maintenance. All of those things were things that we were very conservative in our estimates, because we wanted to under-promise and over-deliver. And then one thing that you may be aware of is that actually if you consolidate schools, you get a standards of quality freeze for 5 years. So you can bill the state as if you were still operating 6 high schools. In your case, it would be, I assume, 2 high schools. So for 5 years, you can charge the state for having 2 sets of principals, 2 sets of assistant principals, even though you may only have 1. In our case, we were able to charge for 3 sets of administrative teams for 5 years. So again, that figure that we put in there is very conservative, because high school principal with benefits and with your salary will be somewhere close to $100,000 a year. So considerable savings in that particular area. What we were able to do is save about 1.7 or $1,700 per student saving each year in that. So as we looked at this, one of the things that we came across, that the debt service on our entire project was $60 million. So debt service to the county was $3.5 million. We were able to save $3.7 million. So actually we were able to save the operational costs. Now, we got money when it was very cheap. We were able to get some QSCAB bonds. We were able to get the literary loans, some of those kind of things. So we were able to save about the amount of money that we had in debt service. Now, unfortunately, this county is probably the same as every other county in Virginia. We lost $18 million over the last 4 years with state funding, different kind of things happened. So we wasn't able to realize the total amount of savings because the state cut us. But if we had not been able to consolidate schools, it would have just been a tremendous deficit for us. So in this, we were able to save an operational savings about what it would have cost for the debt service. Now, the other point that I want to point out here to you, with the exception of line number 2, $950,000, all the rest of this was gained from non-instructional positions. So we kept our teachers, kept most of those in the buildings, all the rest of them, even though, and we will make it very clear this evening, your administration, your principals, those individuals have a tremendous impact on the quality of your school, and research after research states that the quality of your school will never exceed that of your principal. But in this, we were able to have the less impact on people in the classroom by going through this. All the rest of the savings, less than $1 million of this 3.7, came from what most people would consider non-instructional personnel. So we felt pretty good about that the number of teachers that we got, or that we had to eventually reduce, was very insignificant to the whole piece. Now, as we go through this on this next one of the things that I'm sure this board, and I'm sure Dr. Thornton and all of the parents and community members are concerned about, if we did consolidate, if we did build new schools, what would we get out of that? In the first part that I showed you, there was definitely some economic advantages associated with that. But the thing that all of us got in this field for is to make sure that kids have the best possible educational opportunities. And the first thing that we saw is curriculum advantages. First thing that we were able to do, we were able to maintain current programs. When I took over Wise County School Division, we had an operating budget of $80 million. Today it is $60 million. We've lost state funding, lost some federal funding, different kind of things. But right now, we actually have more programs than what I had when I started. And part of the way that we were able to do that is that we were able to shut down some small, inefficient schools and able to increase the amount of curriculum offerings that we had. So we were able to maintain the current programs. We also allowed some remedial programs. We had an English 9A and 10A. And what we did with that is students that were struggling with either writing or reading at the 9th and 10th grade level, we had a special class for those individuals that we could provide specific instruction on reading instruction and specific writing instruction before those kids actually took English 9 and English 10. So it really helped us with some of those kids who were struggling. We didn't put them in a pool with everybody else that was swimming a marathon. We allowed those students to learn to swim and become more efficient. We also did a college passport test. We know that across this nation, about 33% of the students who enter college are actually required to take remedial instruction before they're able to take a math class or English class. What we do now is that we give the students the math and English passport test in the 11th grade. If those individuals can't pass the test that most of our local colleges require for them to take beginning freshman English and math, then we make those students take a math class their senior year. Because what you will probably find out is that your students actually are through taking math by their 10th or 11th grade year. If you're on the block, they can finish up their math by 10th grade. And if they're on a regular schedule, they can normally do that by 11th grade. And so what we do is we send a lot of students to college. They're not necessarily unprepared. They've just not had that course right prior to going into college. So what we do with this, if they are unable to pass that test, then we make them take another year worth of math and English. And that prepares our students for college. And what we've done with that is there are local colleges waive the eligibility test to come into college. So as long as they pass that in the high school level, then they automatically let the kids come in. There's no testing required. Also, we're able to do some pre-algebra things in the 8th grade and 9th grade to prepare students for algebra, because what we found out, if students can at least pass Algebra 2, they're not going to be successful in college. Algebra 2 is a minimum piece, and so what we're trying to do is push all of our kids to be able to take algebra in the 8th grade, so then they can end up with calculus in some of our dual enrollment classes as seniors. Also, we increased dual enrollment. We've put now a classroom teacher who's certified to teach most of our dual enrollment classes in every one of our high schools. Before, what we had to do is do it through telecommunication pieces, and so students were taking some of our physics classes, some of our calculus classes in dual enrollment. They were taking that on an internet-based piece, and it was not the best way to communicate, not the best way for students to learn. Now we actually have a teacher in each one of our schools that are certified to teach dual enrollment. And I heard the young lady that was recognized this year as one of your seniors. We have several of our students too. They actually graduate with an associate's degree in May, and then they graduate from high school in June. So with all of our students, there's no reason why they cannot graduate with an associate's degree, and we actually have another program that we start out that students are able to take a STEM class at UVA at Wise, and that's with our most able students, and those individuals are able to concentrate their entire day, their senior year, on science and math initiatives. And that enables us, because we have consolidated, it made that possible. So all of our students should be able to get at least their first year, and most of the time they can get their second year done of college with credit classes in terms of their general ed classes with our current setup. Also, we increased the electives. We initiated a lot of middle school electives in our middle school because we took some of our high school folks and brought down to the middle school. We also created an alternative middle school. We had an alternative school for our high school, but some of our students at the middle school level just didn't fit into that traditional day. And we were losing a lot of kids, and we were seeing our dropout rates and our academic problems start early. And so what we did is we created an alternative school, put one of our best teachers in charge of that school, and now she works with our at-risk middle school students. That's a flow-through program, so students can go in for a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it takes, try to get some of those things remediated, and then feed them back into the regular school. Also, our fine arts program, we were able to increase those and actually beef up some of our fine arts programs. In one of our schools that we only had 194 students in, you could imagine that our band program was not that robust. Our football team wasn't that robust. Our art team was not that rigorous. And so with this, bringing all the students together, we were able to actually beef all of those fine arts programs up. And then also we created some physical elements with the new schools. We were able to create computer and science labs, technology in the classrooms. And one of the things that we did is we moved from the projector to the interactive TV. So each one of our classrooms now have a 60-inch interactive TV. So the teacher now, it's a giant iPad in front of the classroom, so he or she can get up, actually manipulate the board. They can go ahead and pull up a keyboard on that TV. They can also access lesson plans from any one of our high schools throughout the division. So if a teacher comes up with a great plan about the exploration of the West, then any teacher in our building can pull those up through these TVs and go ahead and utilize that in his or her classrooms. And then we're also actually able to put the disciplines together. So beforehand, we might have only had one teacher in the history department, and that doesn't lend itself to collaboration and cooperative work. Also, on the instructional part, not only were we able to offer more curriculum pieces, but we were able to offer more instructional advantages. We feel one of the things it did is it really strengthened the teaching staff. We got good ideals from all schools, so we know from a lot of the research that teaching is a very isolated profession, even though it shouldn't be. We find out that it is. So we were able to bring teachers from these 6 schools into 3 and were able to share those ideals. We were actually able to target the strength of all teachers. We had some teachers that loved to teach American history, but they didn't like to teach government. If you were in one of the small schools, you had to teach American history, geography, government, all of those pieces. What we were able to do is we brought individuals together. We were able to target their strengths, what they wanted to do. We actually were able to create some strong teams. As I said before, if you were a team of one, that didn't lead itself to a lot of collaboration and cooperative work. We also balanced the PTRs before, and you probably would have some of the same kind of issues. Your highest PTRs are probably in some of your electives, and your smaller PTRs, you would want those to be in your core classes. You would want your smaller classes to be in your algebra classes, to be in your English classes. What we found out, our English classes were full because everybody had to take it, but the art class we had 5 or 6 in. The band we had 2 or 3 in. So by going together, what we were able to do is switch that, able to have stronger band programs, and then we're also able to have some of our classes that had those balanced PTRs. We actually were able to allow teachers to focus on one subject instead of having 4 or 5 different plannings. Then you only had the one. So you could teach American history for 3 blocks, and then that enabled you to be better prepared and focused on that. Now another piece, when we went from 6 high schools to 3 high schools, all of our parents said there's no way those kids will get together. They've been playing each other in football all this time, and baseball and basketball. They'll just absolutely kill each other and there'll be anarchy. Well, fortunately for us, our kids didn't act like our parents. They acted like mature individuals. And what we saw with this is actually our discipline referrals went down from 6.7 to 4.3 per day. We asked some of our teachers and we asked some of our kids, how did that happen? Because you would think in a bigger high school you'd have more problems. And I think the secret to this is that we were able to put kids in classes where their instructional needs were met. Beforehand, in that small school that I had 194 in, everybody went into algebra class because we had to have everybody in there to make that class make. Not all of those kids were probably ready for Algebra 1. And so now what we did, we were able to break it down into the algebra or pre-algebra, Algebra 1A, and able to actually put students in classes where they actually needed to be. And what we found out, if we can meet the needs of students, those kids will be better behaved and become more engaged. And if they are engaged, then that's already part of the issue about making sure that they're able to stay together. We also strengthened administrative teams. We took our very best principals and our very best assistant principals, made those individuals the principals of our new school. We also took our best guidance counselors, and we were able to focus on continuous school improvement. Instead of having 6 schools that we had to direct the focus of, we were able to narrow that down to 3, and that enabled us to really focus on some mighty good things. Also, we increased the dual enrollment, which I spoke about earlier. And the other part that we want to make sure that individuals understand is that we developed a very effective staff management plan. Even though we've lost $20 million over the last 5 years, we have not had to have the first layoff. We were able to do stuff with a very strategically placed staff management plan that we didn't rehire individuals when they retired or when they resigned. We also had an early retirement incentive plan that actually was very financially beneficial to us. And so we planned for this 3 years ahead, 2 years ahead, and we were able to have our staffing the way that we needed it to be. So nobody lost jobs. The only individuals that did, some of our support staff did, because we were not able to take care of everybody in this, but we did not have the first reduction in force with any of our teachers with any of this. Also, extracurricular advantages. We were able to strengthen athletic teams. We had a band of 3 people in one of our schools. We had a wrestling team of 2. We had a tennis team of 3 and 1. And those individuals were simply not able to compete, not able to interact with other individuals. So as we brought this together, we had those small, uncompetitive teams. Now we got unified athletes and coaching staffs. We have won a couple state championships now and been runner-up in several of those. We created new teams, the band program, wrestling program, cross-country, tennis track, all those. Was able to actually start a soccer program, which we did not have before because we were able to save so much money with some of our consolidated savings. But one of the drama teams that we put together won second in state this year, and both of those had kind of struggled to that point. Decreased costs, of course, with the athletic piece. There was fewer coaches to pay. We had traveled last mile, so if you think about running buses right now, for us, we had 12,000 less miles that we traveled last year just on athletics. Now, that does not include field trips that all of your junior classes at each one of your high schools would take. And we were able to utilize all the existing equipment, so we brought all the weights together, we brought all the blocking sleds together, we brought all of the PE equipment together, so all of those things we were able to unify. And then we had less field maintenance and preparation. If you actually look at that, that's a real expensive piece about keeping all of your baseball fields up, your football fields, your gyms, all of those things. So we were able to recognize some savings there too. Now through all this, well, you did all this, and how well did you do? And I think as we get more to this performance-based education, standards-based outcome, as we begin to look at high accountability, what we were able to do with this is that in math, this is our SOL rankings from last year. In math, we were 5th in the state. So out of the 133, 135 school divisions, we ranked 5th in the state. So only 4 school divisions beat us. In science, we were 15th in the state. In history, 14th. Grade 11 writing, we were 14th. In grade 3, we were 9th. Grade 3 math, 5th. Math 6th, we were 10th. Algebra 1, 11th. Algebra 2, 13th. And geometry, we're 6th. Now, the thing that I'd like to point out to you here, we are not a wealthy county. We've got 57% free and reduced lunch. Over 50% of our parents did not graduate from high school. We don't have a culture of education in our particular county. Students are not encouraged by parents in the community to go on and get that post-secondary. I was actually the first in my family to graduate high school and first in my family to go on to college, and I'm not unique in my particular county, but our teachers and our administrators are able to do some pretty powerful things with students. Part of that is we've got excellent administrators. Part of it is we've got excellent teachers. But part of it is that we've got some facilities and we've made some decisions to start strengthening the curriculum, start strengthening the instructional program. So at the end of the day, we're able to produce some very high achieving students that really, as you look at some of the national norms about what really impacts, a lot of times you look at the socioeconomic piece, and our students should probably not be doing this well. But our teachers have high expectations for them. We have high expectations for our teachers and our administrators and the facilities that we have, and then also the being able to bring folks together so that we were able to strengthen the instructional program and the curriculum. I know that you have had an operation or that you've looked at the PPA process before, but I wanted to just share this with you so that you would have this information. This is a tale of two processes. We actually, as I told you, we built 2 schools, Union High School and Central High School, under the PPA process. We did a bid build, that traditional piece, with Eastside High School. The upfront cost, A&E, was $600,000, and we got 1 design with that. On the upfront cost with PPA process, we actually ended up making money because you know that you can charge companies to review their particular projects. And with that, we ended up getting 4 designs. So without us having any money up front, we had 4 designs delivered to us, and we could look at those designs and see which one of those designs we liked best. And at that point, we actually charged them, I believe, $50,000 a piece to even look at these. Now, we gave that money back, but we did have a situation where there's no upfront cost associated with you, and you're able to get some access to some very good information right up front. The budget on our traditional piece was $8.5 million. It climbed to $10.8 million, and we had 18 change orders, and it's still going. On our budget for the PPA process, we had $52.5 million. We actually dropped that down to $51.5. And what we did with that, we had 2 change orders, which was actually initiated by the school division, not by the construction company. Completion date, they were supposed to be done August 2014. We're still working on it. On the PPA process, we were supposed to be done in January 2014, and we finished up on schedule and under budget by nearly $1 million. The conflicts with A&E, when you go that traditional piece, and I'm doing this today, I actually had a meeting this morning. My roof people said that it was the architect's fault and the installation, and the architect said no, it was installed improperly. So I'm still going back and forth in a battle and those guys to try to determine who's at fault with this. I've had over 20 different resolution meetings to try to determine whose fault it was. I don't really care whose fault it was, I just want it fixed, but I've got to go through that process, which takes away time from us. The value engineering in this is very limited as opposed to the PPA process. Had a single source, and actually I'm with Mr. Ballard this evening, who is the president of Ballard. construction company, and the great thing about the PPEA process, you've got one person who's responsible for everything. So I didn't have to talk to a roof guy, I didn't have to talk to the door person, I didn't have to talk to the electronics person. Regardless of what happened, it was Steve Ballard's responsibility to fix it. So I talked to one person, and he was able to resolve those very quickly. Now, the other problem, I think, or the other issue that I think is very important, at the very beginning, because you've got the PPA, because you've got the architects and you've got the construction folks together, you can do some serious value engineering at the very beginning. And that saved us over $1 million. And for example, one of the things, after they initiated this, we sat down and looked at the building. We were able to take out a hallway that cost us $200,000. The hallway didn't really go anywhere. It wasn't required for stairs. It wasn't required for fire exits, any of those kind of things, but it did make the flow a little bit easier for about 2% of our students. We decided that wasn't worth that amount of money, and we were able to take that out. Some similar things that didn't impact the instructional program. And what we were able to do, not only did we do that, but in the scope of work, we got exactly, well, actually it was reduced from what the architect said, because we ran out of money before we were able to finish the project. But in the scope of work, we actually increased the number of classrooms. We had over 14 more classrooms added into the place. We were able to put a backup generator in both schools. We were able to do several neat kind of things in our school because we were able to sit down with the architects and engineers in the same room. And the value that you have with that is when you have the architects and the engineer, if the architect says something, but the contractor says, we can do that, but it's going to cost you another $1,500 or it's going to cost you another $300,000. Could we not do this? And there was a couple of things that we did that had very limited impact on safety, instruction, curriculum, any of those kind of things, just aesthetic. But it was a situation where we were able to have all the important people in the room together. And then ownership of the risk, this is another important piece. On the ownership of the risk, we had all of the risk. With this, after the PPA process is given, after guaranteed maximum price, and I think this board would know that then the construction company assumes all of that risk. The time associated with this, 195 days or so to get all of this going, and then the time, I think we were fairly fortunate because we had a lot of good work and we really focused and knew what we were doing, because I've done this process a couple times, but we were able to actually get this one going in 120 days. So in terms of time, money, effort, all of those kind of things, it can save you money, can save you time. And with the consolidation process, I can tell you it is a very difficult emotional issue. No one likes to see their school consolidated, shut down. It's a situation that every time I still go to Pound High School, it always hurts my heart just a little bit. But then I see what our kids are able to get in the new schools, and it's just a phenomenal piece. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'll be available to the superintendent or any board members if I can help you through this process any. But at this time, it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Ross, who will talk to you about some of the architectural stuff.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. My name is Mike Ross. I'm an architect and an educational facility planner. I wasn't the architect that Dr. Perry was throwing under the bus there. I've been following Mecklenburg County schools for about 2.5 years now, and what I've learned over that time is, as a board and as a community, you all are very committed to improving the quality of learning for the students of Mecklenburg County. I've learned that you embrace the idea that students need a deeper learning grounded in real-world context. I've learned that you feel that students require that the learning of those, what we call 21st century skills, lifelong learning, those habits of the mind that constitute critical thinking, creative thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication, all those soft skills that makes us successful in the world. And I've also learned that you have embraced project-based learning as your means to achieve those goals. So what I want to talk to you tonight, I want to just leave you with 2 brief thoughts. And the first is a rhetorical question. Do facilities matter? And obviously, this is in the context of your chosen education model, project-based learning. Got to advance my slides. Okay. So, school planners have been designing classrooms pretty much the same way for about 80 years. And over the years, we've called that the factory model. But a classroom is 4 walls with a board in the front, teacher-centered. Teacher is the distributor of information. The students are receptors of information, and they are assessed by test taking. As you have moved into project-based learning, I think you're starting to understand that there are different modalities in play with these new learning styles. I've devoted the last 10 years of my career in really coming to understand what makes problem-based and project-based learning work. I've shadowed teachers. I've conducted my own project and problem-based learning exercises within schools. And what I've learned is that there are uniquely different learning activities that occur that are non-traditional. And they have facility implications. And as you are contemplating moving ahead with either consolidating or improving the schools that you have, I want to ask you to keep in mind some of these ideas and how we can improve the quality of learning environments as you move forward to facilitate project and problem-based learning. So as we break down problem-based learning and project-based learning, the first thing we know is that it's a fairly iterative process. And what I mean by that is there's no necessarily right answer. It's a process of problem solving where students define problems, they define the process for how they're going to solve the problem, they gather information, they synthesize the information, they engage in critical thinking, and then they start trying things. They start experimenting. They start solving the problems, and there's sequences of refinement and they're making things, so they're producing things, and then they get to the point where they need to gain feedback, either from the teachers or from their peers. So they're presenting and they're being assessed. And all of these various learning processes generate different types of learning activities. And these words that you see in red here are the verbs that I have come up with in working with various teachers who are experts in the field of project-based learning over the last 10 or so years. But the learning activities of focusing, planning, research, thinking critically, thinking creatively, drafting, trying, that iterative process, the idea that there's no one right answer, but there can be many right answers, and the best answers are achieved through collaboration and teamwork. The concept of making things. And once you make that thing, fine-tuning it, self-assessing what you've made and improving it, showing it to your peers, showing it to your teachers, and going through that evaluation process, being evaluated by your peers and also by your teachers, and also that value of self-reflection. How did I do with this project or with this problem, and how can I improve my processes in the future? So what is space designed to facilitate this look like? And I want to start out by saying that we're not talking about more space, and we're not talking about more expensive space. What we're talking about is the thoughtful organization of space, how spaces work together, how spaces are connected to each other, transparencies, how flexible furniture is within spaces. This is a cutaway of a 330 learning student community in the New Kellum High School in Virginia Beach, which happens to be a new high school that Mr. Ballard just built for us. We opened it about 3 weeks ago. But it has a lot of different types of spaces in it that you see are not traditional to a high school setting. There are spaces, small spaces that we actually call them collab areas. They're places for student collaboration to come together, to work in small groups, work on projects. There are spaces for students to come together and show and present their projects, to share their ideas. We have maker spaces. one of the driving ideas behind this particular school, and I believe is very important in problem-based learning, is the idea of interdisciplinary problem-based learning. And the model here was to integrate all of the subjects into one learning community, because in the real world, most of us don't solve problems just thinking about science or math or social study. We use all the subjects, all that we've learned, and bring them together and synthesize that information to solve problems. So the idea that teachers can collaborate together to create interdisciplinary lesson plans and students can learn in that way, it proves their ability to absorb the content and to be able to think creatively and critically. So within this space, we have science labs, we have math spaces, we have social studies spaces, we have language arts spaces, we have design spaces, we have maker spaces, we have presentation spaces, all within the learning community, all in an interdisciplinary manner. So what might some of these spaces look like? Well, in addition to traditional classrooms, we need spaces for individual and small group work. We also need spaces for medium-sized group work. You know, maybe a third of a classroom or half classroom size. And they need to be fairly transparent so that teachers don't have to be in these spaces. They can be adjacent to classrooms, adjacent to hallways, but they're non-traditional learning spaces where students can break off and work on projects and work collaboratively in alternative modes. We need spaces for collaboration. Collaboration is one of the most important skills that we learn and preparing us for the real world and teamwork. So we need spaces where students can come together and collaborate, work as teams. Spaces that give them access to all kinds of digital media and where they can collaborate digitally with their handheld devices in real time. We need to build spaces where students can have the resources and the tools to try things, to make things. Not just technology labs, but other types of maker spaces throughout the schools. As we move into project and problem-based learning, our assessment model changes. We need more space for demonstration and presentation where students can share what they've made and what they've produced with their peers and with teachers and with their parents. So we need to create those types of spaces within spaces. And we also need flexible spaces, and that's one of the most important concepts that I want to share with you, is that education is evolving, and any school that you design, you should be thinking about how can I use this space for multiple functions, and how might this space evolve over time to support educational programs that we haven't even envisioned yet. And sometimes that means movable walls, sometimes it means movable furniture within spaces. Sometimes that means a really creative teacher. This was a environmental science teacher. He felt free enough with our science lab casework in this new school to rearrange the table so he could create a mock tornado. But having that freedom within that space is invaluable.
Are these from Wise County?
No, this is actually the new high school in Virginia Beach.
Is Wise County School a PBL school design?
Project-based learning.
So the design of your school is not a project-based learning school?
No, we did not go with that particular concept. We have a lot of those elements in our school. In terms of what we felt as instructional program, we worked out as well for us to be
Okay, so these two presentations aren't tied
They're
in.
not necessarily related. They're information to share with you as a board.
So you're doing a presentation on PBL, you were doing the PPEA process.
We were going to do the PPA process for the request for consolidation. And so, and the good thing about the PPA process is that you get to design the school that you want. So if you believe yourself into this, then you can redesign this, you can revise it, you can move through it, and that'll be part of what Mr. Ballard would say. We want to be very cognizant of the time, too. We know that
Right.
you've got a full agenda. But part of the beauty of this is that regardless of what conceptual model you want, the PPA can provide that for you.
Okay, initially I thought you were a PBL school and your results that you showed on the test scores were based on PBL?
No,
Is not?
no, sir.
Okay.
We have, there are elements of that, but as we begin to research some things and do some things, we felt, take elements of each one of those were a better concept for us.
Thank you.
So your layout is at the back of the booklet,
Correct.
so, and you're more traditional classrooms instead of the open concept.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And for us, again, we made a conscious decision to do that because our teachers felt like they had some of the experiences and could do some things better in those kind of classes.
Thank you.
And obviously, we're trying to do a lot of things in a little time. You know, Dr. Perry's presentation was mainly about the benefits of consolidation, because we knew that was of interest to you, and also knowing that designing facilities for problem-based learning would be of interest to you. We're trying to hit several things here.
Now, are you with Ballard?
I'm an architect. I work with Ballard on several projects, but I don't work for Ballard.
Okay, so
I'm an independent architect.
you were the architect
I
for
was
the
the
Wise
architect.
County and for the Virginia Beach?
I'm the architect for the Virginia Beach High School, which Mr. Ballard just completed building.
Okay.
Okay. Library media centers are evolving to more flexible spaces with movable furniture, flexible tables, becoming more of a learning commons type environment that supports various types of learning styles or learning groups. We found that it's increasingly important to provide outdoor educational spaces to support our young people. This is an example of an outdoor courtyard at the new high school, where we incorporated edible gardens and rainwater cisterns and composting bins, all in support of the culinary arts program of the school. And just as important, it's vital to provide professional spaces for your teachers for that interdisciplinary planning and project time. And the last thought I want to leave you with is, as you go about thinking about where you're going with your school design and selecting your architect, I want to ask you to make sure that you find an architect that is excellent at engaging the community in the planning process, because it's very important to make your school, your new schools, a vision of the community. And I know that you're already gone a long ways towards that. Engaging them in the process as stakeholders, involving them in the planning and the visioning can do a lot in terms of creating them the opportunity to buy into this plan, buy into the process, buy into the funding of it. And an added benefit of this process is utilizing the design process itself to create opportunities for project-based learning within the design program. And that was something we did at Pelham High School. All those interesting features that I showed you in the Educational Courtyard were actually designed by students in environmental science labs, so we engaged in problem-based learning exercise. So with that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Steve Ballard.
I am Steve, and I'm going to be real quick. Just so y'all know, the PPA process, I'm Steve Ballard, president of Steve Ballard, 35 years. And this will be, actually, we just were awarded 5 new schools in North around the PPA process. I think what's important, I'm just going to hit on it, is if you look at these schools, well, under the PPA process, you, the owner, and as well as the citizens of in the surrounding areas, everybody gets to participate in the design. And that's when there's a lot of preconceived concepts. This is where one of the schools at Wise started, and this is where they went 8 months later. This is where they went 3 months later, and this is where they ended up. And the price never changed, and the schedule never changed. And that's basically just because after we got everybody's input, there's a lot of facts. That, we picked almost 9 sites for one of these presentations. We visited the possibility of putting on 9 different sites. I can hear about going crazy, but we kept the price, we kept the time period, and we kept getting community input, the principals' input, the staff's input, and made like a tremendous amount of changes, I think are at the end. But, you know, we started off with a round radius school, and Brooks said, no, I don't like that period, that's too extra people. So we changed all of it, made all the hallways straight. No change in price, you know, all this was done from community input and teachers' input. And obviously, we're leaving you a lot of this percent, but under the PPA process, like Dr. Perry said, you know, the price never changed, the square footage went up, and we gave them 65% more program in both schools. How did you do that? Well, Dr. Perry said, gee, Steve, terrazzo on the second floor is not as important as giving me a home economics class or a larger gym or bigger auditorium. So you'll see in here, you know, in this process, you have the ability to work with architects and everybody. You know, if you don't like the problem-solving layout, you know, we'll work with you guys what you think your staff needs. Important figure here is our Y schools were $27,000 student. That's almost $7,000 or $8,000 per student less than what the state standards are. And we were $143 a square foot. How to do that? I'll tell you how. Dr. Perry said, Steve, this is all the money I got. I want a great school, state of the art, and all the new facilities, 57, 50 or 70-year schools. This is all the money I'm going to spend. So that's what we designed here. And gave them state-of-the-art schools. And I think a few of y'all know, y'all can tell why. And then this is the final product out here on both schools. Like Dr. Perry said, both of them were delivered for the schedule that he asked, and as well as for the price. And that's about it. And I know we've been way too long. I appreciate y'all's time. And yes, I would be the quarterback and put the team together and work with you and the community to make sure you got the product you want. And if you check around the state, you'll see I got a pretty good reputation of making that happen, as well as getting everybody involved in it and give you what you're looking for at the end. With that, anybody have any questions? Okay.
The consolidation process, it took us, we were able to do that in about 18 months after the board made the decision, and we actually started breaking ground. Steve, I believe we were able to finish in about 18 months. Yes, ma'am. We were talking about consolidation when I graduated in 1982. So it is a process that took a long period of time. And in all seriousness, it did take us a long time. I was there. The board had made the decision prior to me coming back. I was out in Colorado for superintendent's position there, came back. So it took us about 2.5, 3 years. And it was a very difficult process for everyone. It was very emotional. We held a number of community forums to collect input from individuals and try to do everything very transparently. Told them up front what we were doing, and the eventual outcome of the better curriculum, better instruction, and increased savings. And if it had not been for that, we would have been forced to consolidate anyway and not had the new building. So it was a process for us, and it was something that our county struggled with for a long period of time. But in the end, even our most, probably our most adamant opposition, but those individuals are pretty pleased with what we resulted in, and we constantly hear folks saying, I wish we had only done this earlier.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Question. Go ahead. That's right, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Perry, how long have you occupied the new facility?
We've been in there for since January, so we're only in there for a few months.
And which community college serves you?
We have two, actually. We have Mountain Empire Community College, which is a 2-year vocational school college, and then we have UVA at Wise, which is a 4-year college. Yeah, we have a very low local composite index. Our local composite index before we got the power plant was 17.17, and it went up to 0.2. So we were the third lowest in the state prior to the power plant coming in. They added $1 billion with a B property tax base to us, and then it went up to 0.23. So we still have one of the lowest tax rate mills in the state, actually. But now our Board of Supervisors, they actually provide twice as much as they're required to do. They're required to add $7 million in, and they give us 14. So we have a very supportive Board of Supervisors. Yes, ma'am, on a yearly basis. Now, this year it's going to get tougher because the local composite index is going up. Yes, ma'am. We went through a couple of series of things. We did literary loans. We did QSCAB, which is those qualified school construction loans, which we got at 0%. And then we were able to just simply borrow from the Virginia Public School Authority. So from different sources, but all of them from bonds, yes. No, ma'am, currently we do not, because with those individuals, we just simply have an agreement that those particular teachers normally get, some of the best academically motivated students, and they enjoy that. And so now we have paid for individuals to receive that master's, in some cases that second master, to be able to certify, to be able to teach. So we've worked with our individuals over the last 5 years, making sure that they were in a position that they could do that. So, but we do not pay an extra stipend for that unless they teach that additional block. In some cases, we did. And then we specifically look for individuals that could teach those particular classes.
You're not heading back to Powell tonight, are you?
Pardon me?
You're not going back to Powell tonight, are you?
No, not this evening. I'll go back to Wise this evening. But as we went in there, one of the most adamant opposition that we had to that, he had actually has 2 daughters playing, and they're actually playing this evening for the competition and tournament for first in the division. And actually his daughter, which had no chance of going to a state, actually was in the state competition last year, and he and his wife are just extremely pleased with that. And all of a sudden, Jeff Perry's name is getting a little bit less opposition in some of those communities, because they do see, and I think the young lady from Appalachia, which was probably our most adamant opposition, when she said, "I am so glad that you guys freed me for just having to live the legacy of my mom and dad, and now I get to be my own person." That is a liberating kind of thing, I think, for a lot of our kids, when they're not forced to do what their parents did, but they're able to create their own legacies.
Also, under the PPA process, we have a financial guy that works with the Board of Education. Mr. Virginia, he works for 31 counties on finance. He can come in and help you do all that. I had to bring him in for the city of Norfolk, and they kept thinking they only have money to do, they only have 2, but he showed them by lessening the debt, consolidating a couple issues, now we're at 5, so.
And we did see that. We had a tremendous upfront cost with a poor school division like we were. It was enormous to get all the stuff together for the educational specs, for the financial, for all those things. But with the PPA process, these companies can bring all of those resources to bear. So you get all of that free up front, and then they're able to help you. Now, of course, you always want to kind of check behind them, make sure they're doing the right kind of things, but at least it gives you that initial information that you can present factual information to your community and not base everything on simply emotion.
Dr. Perry, I think it's pretty impressive with how you're ranking amongst the state. I
Thanks,
think
sir.
that's pretty impressive, so evidently you're doing something good down there.
Well, we like to tell people it's superior leadership at superintendent's office, but we think that, and we know what it is. It is superior teachers, and we've got some great classroom teachers, got some great administrators, and part of what it did help us with, when we were able to consolidate our schools, and we were able to put our best principals and our best assistant principals and our best teachers in those buildings, it made all the difference in the world. And I think project-based learning, I want to make sure that you all understand that's a great concept for us in terms of the design of our school. We didn't have the money to do some of those spaces. We had to go more traditional, but we still have many of those elements within that, within our school.
Does your band teach the folk music?
Actually, we have a band teacher that's actually dedicated to what we found out, if he's not working with kids in elementary school and middle school, so he or she is actually devoted especially to just the band program. Then we have another choir teacher and choral teacher. So,
Mountain Empire Community College has a summer program for high school kids for folk music, and it's very popular.
yes, we do work with, I thought you said choral, you said folk, I'm sorry. Yes, we, with that particular part, actually, we do have some kids who are wanting to go into the musical field. We actually allowed those kids on that particular pathway to engage in those activities. Very supportive of that.
Question, Mr. Ballard, what city are you from? I mean, where
I
you?
was born in Norfolk, Virginia.
Well, I thought your company's in Norfolk.
No, my
Newport
company's in
News.
Virginia Beach. My
But yeah,
wife
well,
made me move out there.
Right, I understand. I understand.
Stay down the road.
Okay. Yeah,
But born, I'm in Norfolk, guys, and I've got an office in Norfolk and
that business will travel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Well, we used to be in Tampa and we're in Richmond.
Okay. yeah.
Dr. Thurton, members of the board, we certainly do appreciate the opportunity. We apologize, we took up way too much time. As superintendent, I know that you've got a heavy agenda here. I know that you've got a lot of things to go on later on in the meeting. We do appreciate any service that we can be. We think that any of us that have walked this road, we need it, and we owe it to other generations to kind of help individuals and be of any service that we can. So if we can be, we'll certainly be willing to do that. So thank you very much, and good rest of the school year. We wish you the best in all things, and as February is School Board Appreciation Month, we know it's not an easy job to sit on anymore, because no decision is easy. No decision is without consequences for some group, and we know everything is a battle now. So we appreciate you serving and appreciate you for all that you do. Dr. Thurton,
Thank
good luck.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to move on our agenda. Move on to item B.
Okay, item B is the walkways that the board asked to investigate, the walkways and covers to the new gyms at the 3 elementary schools. The design was in your packet for these 3. Also in your packet under the confidential part was the enclosure from Blair Construction, who bid this. And if you've noticed on that section, there's a markup. You can do the walkways with Blair Construction, but there is a markup for them through the PPA process that we've done for the 3 additions. And if you look at La Crosse, the markup of 15% is $8,875.35. For Chase City Elementary, which is a much smaller walkway, the markup is $1,670.10, and the markup at Clarksville is $7,180.35. And that's just the markup on the construction. It does put us over the $6.2 million. It would be my recommendation that we ask for the walkways in our capital budget, but that we bid it ourselves and not pay Blair Construction, it looks like almost $17,000 just because they did the bid process. So, are there any questions at
Yeah.
this point?
I agree with that, since it looks like they're subbing it to somebody else anyway to have them put in.
Correct.
You know, it seems like to me,
I pay them to handle the money.
yeah, I said $1 million, I'll get off the board.
The only thing this does is through the PPA process that we're under, you can add, this would be a change order, so we could add it and move forward quickly. We've done without the walkways and had all these for a long time, so I recommend we move forward and ask for the money to do the walkways, but not
Not
with
this
Blair.
way. Yes, I think
Not
that's a good
Fenway.
idea. Anyone?
I have a question. The La Crosse, is this going from the end of the school all the way to the gym, or the new doorway between the old addition and the new addition? Because that would be shorter.
The other one's 414 feet.
Yeah. It's like you go at one end and have to go all the way behind the school.
Right. We actually left out some of the requests, because you could have gone from several different doorways that were in the request. So that was their design,
Okay.
and they worked with our people with that as well. So we're not stuck with that design.
Yeah, that's just what they got together for us. Anybody have anything else on that? All righty, we're gonna move on to C. That's you also, Dr. Thornton.
So, yeah. C is the Bluestone High School Beta Overnight Field Trip, March 17th through March 21st. And it's a competition, and it is an overnight trip, so you have to approve. And I believe the trip is before we meet again? Okay. And we try to do most of these overnights at the beginning of the year, but some of these things do pop up as we compete in different events. Are there any questions on the Beta field trip?
All righty, we'll move on to item D. Dr. Thornton, that's you also.
Okay. Vaughn, can you pull that up, please? Item D is the 2014-15 preliminary budget. Our mission is to foster a culture of excellence where proud students and educators become the craftsmen of beautiful quality work. And we have gone through the budget process to hopefully provide a budget that will enable for that mission to be successful. Budget goals, a lot of these budget goals came through all of our meetings so far with key people, with teachers, meeting with students, meeting with parents, working on our strategic plan. And these were some of the areas that came out over and over again. One was to promote high expectations and academic rigor and ensure that every student has access to multiple pathways to graduate and be fully prepared for post-secondary learning opportunities and a rewarding career. The second goal was to promote effective educators by investing in human capital that will directly and positively impact student learning and achievement. And I think you just heard in the last presentation, we need to invest in our teachers and administrators at the building level. Goal 3, promote student personal growth so that each can become a responsible contributing citizen. Goal 4, promote community support and involvement in the schools by engaging parents and our community in the education. And Goal 5, promote organizational efficiency and professionalism. So those were the goals that were driving our budget as we created it. Key points that affect the budget. Excellence and equity are driving our daily decisions. The budget is flexible to meet unanticipated or new priority needs. The world will look a lot different for an entering kindergarten student than a rising senior, and we need to prepare for both opportunities. We have seniors going out right now into a world that's changing constantly, but we also have to look at what's saying our young people right now in elementary, and what is their education, what is their lives going to look like 10, 11 years down the road, and try to prepare for that. High expectations for learning and investing in personnel are essential for continuous improvement. So not only having great personnel and investing them and make sure they're here, but also training them and providing professional development. Not everything can be funded, and not everything can be funded at current levels. New needs require us to abandon some past priorities. Diverse needs of our students are a driving budget focus. More key points that affect the budget are the standards of learning have changed and become more rigorous during the past 2 years. Adequate yearly progress has been changed to annual measurable objectives, and you'll see a chart later where we have to go over the next 3-year journey with all of our students. Mecklenburg County Public Schools economically disadvantaged student population is significantly higher than the state average. State average is 37% free and reduced, and we are 62% free and reduced. College and career readiness is the expectation for all of our students. and the whole child is our focus. We are looking at more than one SOL test. We're looking at multiple assessments. We're looking at creativity. We're looking at presentation skills. We're looking at the whole child as they go through the educational process, not just one test. Accomplishments. We want to pinpoint some of the things that are going well and need to continue going. On-time graduation has improved over the last 3 years. Dual enrollment credit has increased. That is one thing that is very unique to Southside, and you heard Wise talk about it in Southwest, where they have several students getting an associate's degree, and we have 20 to 30 students a year now getting it from both high schools. So that is unique to Southside, that we are way ahead in our dual enrollment process and associate's degree. Advanced studies diplomas have increased. We used to have about 33% of our students get an advanced degree, and you heard talk about Algebra 2. Algebra 2 is required to have that advanced studies diploma, and last year we were up to 55% of our students get an advanced studies diploma. So we're pushing more of our students and our teachers to take a risk and let the students take those more challenging courses, even if some of them don't make it. Give them that opportunity so that they can qualify for college if they so choose. We have a high percentage of middle school students successfully completing and receiving high school credit. Those are in algebra, foreign language, etc. We have instructional coaching model and targeted staff development now with our teachers in the building, working with our teachers and our students directly. We have a parent council that has been established for the 5-year strategic plan. They previewed this budget last week. We presented to them and asked for input as well and comments on it. The expansion of school-university partnerships. We're currently trying to work with Longwood University on several partnerships, summer school and a special ed internship where we bring college students who are working on their master's degree straight into our schools to work with our teachers and students. Award-winning band. We have a little more than 3 students in our band programs, and I just couldn't imagine if we put both together, it would be incredible. Some more professional collaboration and leadership academy. Dr. Hackney has started identifying those people within our school system that want to grow professionally, and they're going through training with our leadership academy in-house to develop our own leaders for the future. Summer school and after-school enrichment programs, expansions of technology, student information system and parent portal that has started, and enhanced parent communication and information system, the security grant, and there's many more. Along with those come challenges, and school systems across Virginia continue to be challenged in preserving quality in the face of continued funding reductions and mandated cost increases. In fiscal year 2010, our operating budget was just over $50 million. In fiscal year 2014, our operating budget is $44,734,000. We're operating on $5.3 million less than we did 5 years ago. We have 74 fewer employees than we did 5 years ago. Much like you heard earlier, a lot of those people didn't have to lose their job. They were riffed. Other people retired. We were able to bring them back. I think we did lose maybe 1 or 2, but we retained most of them. But it really doesn't matter. There's 74 less people working with our children that we had working with our children on a daily basis. The budget presented reflects a per-pupil expenditure of $10,165. That's the one I'm presenting tonight. If it was funded, that's what we would be spending per child. We are not spending that currently. It is less, that is less than the state average, $10,500, back in 2006-07. So if we fund this budget, we'll still be behind the state average of 2006-07. For what we spend per child. And we'll talk a little more about that later. Additional challenges. We have accelerated AMO requirements. attracting and retaining exceptional staff to meet the diverse needs of our students. 26.4% of our teachers are at 25-plus years experience. That means 26% of these teachers are going to have to be replaced probably within the next 5 years. And they're not all at 25. Some are at 35 or more. And if they choose to retire, they deserve that right. And if they stay, they deserve to be paid as the very expert professionals that they have become. We have a shortage of math teachers. That's not uncommon, but in Southside Virginia, it's probably hitting us harder than anything. We do have some people who are on provisional licenses. We've had to hire a long-term sub in math who does not have a math license at this time, who's working with our students every day. These are the challenges we face, and they're going to continue to grow, these challenges, as you get supply and demand. If you can make $5,000 to $10,000 more down the road in this economy, you're probably going to go down the road. And there'll be an opening there as well. SAT scores are a challenge. We're looking at all data, not just SRL data. Our SAT scores, and we talked about that at previous meetings, they do not show the level of success that we want for all students. 62% free and reduced lunch, I already said that. Other challenges. We have to meet the diverse needs of our staff, ongoing professional development. As we bring these teachers in with provisional licenses, they need coaching training. They need help. We can't just throw them in and say good luck. We need more instructional technology for students and staff. Right now we have classrooms designed for 20th century learning strategies. We have antiquated facilities. We have lighting, heat, and air problems. We have sewer and water problems that are not going away. Our buildings were built in the 1950s, and we had to cancel school once for water and once because we had no heat at Bluestown High School already this year. That's not optimal learning conditions for our students. Parkview High School should have closed one day because of heat, and maintenance informed us they had got the heat started and it would heat up. Well, when it's this cold, it didn't heat up, and our students and teachers froze, and I have to apologize to them. I should have shut that school down that day. We didn't get a good learning environment. And last, challenges. We rank 135th, last in the state, in the percentage of local effort for incentive programs. There's two types of programs that we're funded in: incentive programs and SRQ, standards of quality. And we rank 133rd in the percent of local effort for SRQ programs. So out of the 135 divisions or cities that receive money, the percent our local government gives us ranks last and 133rd. So are we contributing what we need to our local school division? I think you just heard Wise, who is getting good results. And he said at the end of the presentation, their local government is required to give them $7 million. Their local government gives them $14 million, twice as much as required, 100% of what is required. We give 3%, last in the state. Major challenge. The next slide shows you, and I apologize it's so small, but we will have all this online after tonight's meeting, if it's not already online. But the first two columns show year 1 and year 2 of the AMOs, which is the federal mandates that we have to meet. Year 3, year 4, year 5, those numbers are where we have to get to. And in year 6. The last column, the gap points closed, those are how many points we're away from closing the gap in all those areas. And it talks about all students, the combined black students, Hispanic students, students with disability, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged, and white students. So you see those gaps, and you see the challenge as we move forward with the new SRLs and closing those gaps. new opportunities for next year. We're doing curriculum development during the summer. We have specialized professional development for teachers, community partnerships. We have an energy project going on, a tourism project, and a local history project that are currently going on. Biz entrepreneurship. This is a program where I'm meeting with someone tomorrow, actually, from Longwood University to have a class for entrepreneurship. I already mentioned Longwood University partnerships and creating additional leadership experience I've already talked to, and expanded summer school. We're looking at expanding our summer school. There's a disconnect when you go all the way through the school year, and then we have remedial summer school for 2 weeks, and then you're still sent home for the whole summer, and there's a gap. And we've all talked about this in our instructional team meetings. How can we close that? One of the answers is have summer school all the way through summer. Kids do need some sort of break, so we were brainstorming of how we could do this, and we are looking at a unique expanded summer school experience where they go for 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks they only go for 5 days. Then they have a week off, go for 2 more weeks, have a week off, and go for 1 more week. So it costs a little more than the current summer school that we're providing, but we feel like the students can stay connected over that time period. And also a unique part of that will be the last day in a 2-week period, our students will be exposed to an enrichment field trip, somewhere connected with their learning that they can go and be exposed. Okay. The budgeted ADM, the average daily membership for fiscal year 15 is 4,375 students. The state revenues are based on the governor's proposed budget dated December 16th. And the budget development process compares expenditures and revenues to the approved 2013-14 budget, which does not include supplemental appropriations. So your comparison is what we had adopted last year versus what we're asking for this year. What's in this budget? It assumes a 10% health insurance increase at a cost of $266,000. An increase in dual enrollment revenues of $502,260, and you see under that the same in expenditures. I put that there because it increases the instructional category of expenditures, but it's a wash. So as our students, we get 100% reimbursement as long as we have the teacher teaching it. So we will have to pay out $502,000 more for dual enrollment, but we'll receive that back in revenue, so it's a wash. But we do have to show that in the budget on both sides, revenue and expenditure. An increase in VRS. That's going to happen over the next 6 years, the next 3 bienniums, to get a solid VRS, Virginia Retirement System. They've increased the percentage that we have to pay. That comes at a cost to our school system of $403,000. The increase in the VRS, 1%, what that means is we're on that 5-year plan, if you remember. The employee has to pick up 1% of their VRS, and we have to give them a 1% raise each year for 5 years until they get to 5%. This is year 3. That's a cost of $49,849. Some of the mandates, an increase in algebra readiness. That's one of the line items that the state gives us money in, and you have to have a required local match. That has increased for us of $67,000, and an increase in textbook fund of $19,420. Again, the state has a line item for textbook that says this is how much you have to spend in textbooks, and we have to match that. So we can't go in and say we're fine with our textbook money. We have to spend $19,000 more this year. So that's an increase in the budget without an increase in revenue. That's what they're saying we have to spend in it. So right there, if you look at just that page, and we'll get to how much more we're receiving in state funds. We're receiving, I believe, somewhere in there 400,000, and that's on one of our slides. But before we start this budget process, we're in the hole $800,000 from stuff that we have to pay. There's no getting around this. We have to pay our health insurance. We have to pay the VRS. We have to do the algebra readiness. We have to do the textbook. So before we start, we're $800,000 in the hole. Next, in the budget, it assumes a teacher step increase of $300,822. What that does is every teacher goes up in a step. That doesn't mean every teacher will get a raise because our scale has multiple steps that are the same. But for the teachers who would go from a step that gets an increase, that's what it would cost. So about 1/3 of your teachers getting a raise costs $300,000. And everyone taking that step up, you're one step closer to that year that you jump and actually get the raise. If we don't do this, what happens is teachers still will go from 24 years experience to 25 years experience. We have to keep that steady. So to do that, we have to add another step at their current salary. So if we don't give them that step increase, we add another step in there at their current rate of pay, and the whole salary scale actually goes backwards. It gets wider. The next part assumes instructional aid salary scale. And I know the board, I think this is one of your things that you requested, and it was one of the last salary scale adjustments. We've made salary scale adjustments in lots of categories. This is at a cost of $143,733. This is a 10% increase for instructional aides. And actually, 10% of nothing isn't too much money. When your salary scale starts at $11,000, you can do the math. What's 10% increase? It's not a large increase. Sounds like a huge increase. Our instructional aides have to have a 2-year college degree in order to work with our students, and they work with our students all day long and work very hard. I did cost, I think it was Mr. Edwards asked, to get us somewhere around 14, I think we discussed. Could we get around 14 as a starting salary? When I did that and used our numbers, the cost to do that and move the scale with a starting salary of $14,000 is over $500,000 for the one category. This also assumes, board members have asked for the auto mechanic salary scale. We have had a very hard time trying to fill positions with certified people with ASE certification and other types of certifications to put our buses safely on the road. We don't have a large staff there, so the salary scale adjustment costs $15,151. Same thing in maintenance, it's a cost for $26,000. This assumes assistant principals move to 12 months. This is a request from the principals because there's a disconnect as we plan in the summer. I know the students are gone home for the summer, or some of the students are gone home for the summer. We have to retool and plan for the next year and get going and look at all the data and what are we going to do in the professional development to be successful the next year. Assumes one secondary guidance position in each building moved to 12 months. Again, to have some consistency throughout the summer with our parents and students. Other budget notes included in this budget. The original new personnel request totaled $1 million for 22 positions. And let me stop here because later you'll see Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 on one of my slides. When we started this whole budget process, what we asked for is from our principals, our supervisors, our directors, from all the different departments and schools, what do you need to be successful with your students? That should drive your budget. And they met with their staffs, and these numbers reflect what they need to be successful. And you have to keep in mind that they've been operating over the last 5 years with $5.3 million less than they had. And we are about I don't know where we could get any more, or lose any more at this point. You have to start going back the other way at some point. So the original new personnel request totaled just over $1 million, 22 positions. After I went through their budget requests with the administrative team, I brought it down to $760,753. And I say I, the team did. And then we presented that again back to all of the principals and coordinators and administrators in a room to get feedback on doing that. And in that process, some things came back in that we had taken out at the central office level. And so as we continue this process, this is just an introductory tonight, and in your work sessions, you'll go through the same process. Is there something that you want out of this budget? Is there something you want back into this budget that we've taken out? So that will be the work session. So what we left in was one kindergarten teacher at Chase City Elementary School, and that actually was added back in. And I will say they meet the requirements. And right now, for kindergarten, it would be probably 22 to 1 and would meet the requirement. But that group that we look at their individual data, they need another teacher to get those students in that particular grade to where they need to go based on where the entry point was coming in. So that's how specific we're looking at a budget and targeting our needs. There's a dire need there. Do we not look at the data and just say, oh, it meets the requirements, so good enough for that group? It's not good enough for that group. And there's other places where we're 24 and 25 to 1. And so we have to look at the data to make those decisions. 2 sixth grade core teachers at Parkview Middle School and 2 eighth grade core teachers at Parkview Middle School. We had to, after the budget started, this past year, we had to add 2 teachers at the 7th grade. Our class sizes are ridiculous at Parkview Middle School. Some are we started this year in 7th grade at 30 to 1, 31 to 1. And in those old classrooms, you're crammed together and can barely move around. So to get those class sizes under control, we need 2 sixth grade teachers and 2 eighth grade teachers. And why is that? Some of it is growth in that end of the county. Some of it is students coming back from the Christian school. And some of it is we had to cut positions over the last 5 years. And there were cuts made across the board. And it's now having an adverse effect on us. 1 gate teacher at Bluestone Middle School, 2 foreign language teachers at the high school level. So on the plus side of having more advanced studies diploma students who have to take a foreign language, and that's great that we're challenging more students, but that's exploded our class size, and we need a foreign language teacher at both high schools, even though we've put in Rosetta Stone, which we can service more students at one time. It's still, the numbers are out of control, which that's a good thing now. More kids are getting the advanced studies diploma. 6 instructional aides are needed, an assistant principal for South Hill Elementary. This was a request. Right now we have a principal, 1 assistant, and 1 part-time assistant at South Hill. And at La Crosse, we have 1 principal and 1 part-time. So we have 1 shared between La Crosse and South Hill. So what this request would do would give South Hill 2 assistants and give La Crosse 1 full-time assistant. And La Crosse is a focused school and needs the additional help, again, with mandated things from the state and things to track data. They need the help. South Hill is our largest elementary school with 800 and some, I don't have the exact number, sorry, John. But they need the position. And then 1 grant writing position. Hopefully, we debated with the grant writing position. I really don't think it should be a debate. If we can find someone who can pay for their own salary and get us grants in here, that will be a very positive thing for our school division.
Put them on commission.
There's people who would ask for that. The original personnel request on the next slide, that's a repeat of what you see that we did put in. And but you see some of the things that we did not fund or did not put in at this point. And at the bottom of that list, you see 2 special education teachers. They were not included, and we looked at the numbers and the requirements, and that's an argument. By the requirements, we don't need them, but then specifically for some of our students in some of our schools, do we need them? And that's debatable. There was a request from the board for 2 full-time athletic directors. That was in the initial request, and the cost was, I believe, around $160,000 with benefits to have those 2, 1 for each end of the county. 1 transportation dispatcher and 1 secretary. Those were the ones that we left out. And again, when we get to a budget work session, you can talk more about those. The original new non-personnel requests, that's the next slide. So all those were just personnel requests. Now, if you look at our budget right now, just to give you for instance, Chase City gets probably $18,000 or $19,000 in instructional supplies for the year for 500 students. That's it. And so all of these type of non-instructional requests are based on the schools asking for instructional needs and also the other departments for things that they need. The original new non-personnel request totaled $1.8 million. And again, the question was, what do you need to run your department in your school efficiently for our kids, for them to be successful? And that's the answer back. After we went through it several times, we have it down to $974,000 included in the budget. Well, the first one is an increase in technology for 2 core switches and access points at $332,000. Those are core switches. In the next year's budget, the technology department has asked for 2 more core switches and the same access points. In the next budget, the same type of request. So to maintain or actually move up to get our technology at the same speed and move forward with the new increases, with the new backbones. I don't know all the terms for the backbone, but to run our system so we're up and running, we need to maintain our backbone, and that's a cost of $332,000. So that's kind of a non-negotiable. We need to do that, or our technology is going to crash, and that's a number that's going to stick in there for, again, the next 3 years. That doesn't go away, kind of like the buses. Buses don't go away. You have to replenish. Well, we have to replenish our backbone. And unfortunately, the bad point here where some of these things are coming out is through the money when the budget crashed and all the stimulus money. That was a relief for a short period of time, so we bought some of this stuff for a 3-year period of time. Well, that money's gone now, and now the licenses are gone. Someone has to pick up that bill. So it was good at the time, and they were hoping for the economy to recover, but now someone has to maintain that bill. So that's where some of this is coming from. Elementary increases to meet school needs, $49,440. Currently, between the elementary schools, and that includes the 2 middle schools, I believe they split about $135,000. They asked for significantly higher than that. We whittled it down to $49,000 more. So to keep that in perspective, your elementaries, your 4 elementary schools and your 2 middle schools would have approximately just under $200,000 to split amongst all of those schools, those 6 schools, for instructional supplies. Secondary increases to meet school needs, we whittled that down to a $20,000 increase. Accelerated reader and testing increase of $56,900. Here's another thing that we paid for through stimulus money and paid for a 3-year license. That license is over at the end of this year. So to continue accelerated reader, someone has to pick up that tab, and the federal government's not picking it up anymore. Gate increases, they asked for the gifted and talented, increase of about $15,400. Career and technical increases of $10,444. They asked for a lot more. Again, this is us whittling it down after the initial request. Media increases, our libraries of $24,000. Athletic department increases of $35,000. A band increase of $10,000. And professional development increase of $11,000. The band increase of $10,000 means each band would receive $15,000 a year. Currently, they receive $10,000 a year. In our region, $10,000 is the most any band receives in our region. So we are the top right now in our region of giving money to the band program, and this is an increase. And we have an outstanding band program. And this is just a small pocket. Also, our band boosters raise an extreme amount of money for the band. So the band's actually, I don't want to quote their exact budget, but it's over $80,000 a band that they spend each year with fundraising as well as this money and as well as some fees. So they put a lot of money into it, and it certainly shows each and every year. So some of these requests, algebra readiness increase, you saw. The finance department has increase of $61,000. That's in the RDA system, RICO, all kinds of charges, and during the work session, we'll go into each one of those. Personnel department, they asked for more than that. We whittled it down to $7,000. But it's important to have Ms. Pittard going out and going around trying to recruit the best people. And it's hard to do on a very small budget. The transportation department has asked for an increase of $112,000. It's for different supplies and materials. And then I'll have the breakdown in the work session for you. Maintenance department increases the same type of thing of $88,000. So if you look at the process, you see Tier 1 and Tier 3. I left out Tier 2, which was where just the top administrators looked at it, but then Tier 3 was after we all looked at it again. And you see our current budget is $44,700,000. With the health insurance, with the salary increases, with the new positions, with the new non-personnel requests, and the dual enrollment increase. Again, the dual enrollment is a wash, though. Your total budget, if we went with Tier 1, which was the philosophy of this is what we need, of $48,899,412 $1 million. And Tier 3 is $47,772,548. The expenditures by function, this is how it's broken down and we report to the state. You see instruction, the increase there is going from 29 million to 31 million, percent change almost 2.5 million, and you see the percent of the total budget, the instruction is 75% of our money is spent in instruction. Administration, attendance, and health, you see the increase there of 92,000, and that percent of the total budget in administration, attendance, and health is 3.7% of the budget. Under transportation, they're 8.2% of the budget. Maintenance is 6.7% of the budget. Debt service is 2.1% of the budget, and technology is 4.1% of the budget. Next slide, expenditures by object. Just to give you an understanding, where is the money going and how is it spent? Under personnel services is 55% of the budget. And then you see employee services, that's the benefits that go along with that. So you can see that 76% of the budget is spent on your personnel costs and their benefits. So that's the majority of a school budget is people. Then you have purchase services, and that's almost 5%. Other charges is 2.1 million and 4%. And there was a good question from our parent group, what is that other charges? I had to go back and look through the budget, what are those other charges? Because it was $2 million. And 1.6 million of that is the dual enrollment and governor's school charges. That's grouped under other charges. And other things under other charges is travel, professional development, and most of that is targeted in federal money. So this total of 47 million does include federal dollars as well. Materials and supplies, 3.96% of the budget. Again, only 4% of the budget is the instructional materials and supplies. Your joint operations, which are your heating and your electricity, all of those operations to keep the facilities running is 7.28% of the budget. And then your capital outlay, your thing like your core switches and those big ticket items are 3.25% of the budget. So you see when you have to cut, and that we've been cutting over the last 5 years, the cuts have to come out of personnel when you're talking about $5.3 million, when you're talking about those small percentages. And those other areas were cut over the last 5 years, but that's what we're saying. There's nowhere left to cut. The bleeding has to stop at some point. The expenditure process, what this means is Tier 1 would be an increase of almost $4 million, or 8.8%. After going through scrutiny and going through Tier 3, it's a just over $3 million increase, or 6.8%. Where does that money come from? Next slide. The state last year gave us 25.3, and this year is projected 25.8. So the dollar change you see from the state is an increase of $470,000 from the state of Virginia, which looks fantastic until you go back to the slide where the VRS costs us $407,000, where the algebra readiness costs us, where the health insurance costs us, and we start $800,000 in the hole. So it looks like we are getting $400,000. We're starting in a deficit before you get going. The county, if this budget were approved, and this is the Tier 3 budget that was scrutinized, if that was approved, we would have to go from $12,204,000 to $14,252,000, over a $2 million increase, or 16.7%. And the percent of the total budget would be 29%. The next category is recovered costs. Those are Medicaid and those things that come back to us, E-rate, and we budget those. The dollar change there is dual enrollment. So even though that's an increase in revenue, we're going to spend that same going out. It's a wash. Food service stays the same, and federal money, the reason we left federal money the same is predicted to go down some, but that money, we have to spend it, have it approved. It goes through a documented process. For instance, Tracy Rogers has to go online, go through DOE, have it approved before we can even buy it, because it has to meet the federal requirements for us to do that. So it's money in and it's money out. Next. I know, again, it'll be online, I'm sorry, it's hard to read this. As we're looking to stay competitive, a couple of years ago, the Board of Supervisors did give us $900,000 to address our teacher salary scale, and through that same process, other schools unfortunately did not stand still in time for us. These are the schools in Region 8, which are the surrounding schools, and you see under the beginning salary scale, Mecklenburg is still last at $34,845. 10 years with us, Mecklenburg is still last. 15 or 20 years with us, we move up, and we are ahead of Halifax and Brunswick, which is a good thing. So, and then at the top of the salary scale, when we get to the top, some of these people did not report the top. So it says we're up to 8, but if you look down, Brunswick is, it says 10th, but Brunswick at 30 years is 53,000. So they don't go down under 52. So Brunswick's actually ahead of us at this point too. But we make some gains at the end of the scale. If you dedicate your whole life to us, we'll get you up to ninth place in the region. And, you know, I say this, and you can say whatever you want and have whatever opinion you want. The job of teaching is pretty much the same in every county. You have to do lesson plans, you have to meet the new mandates from the state, the federal government, and when you can drive half hour over to Lunenburg County and get $5,000 more to be a math teacher, you drive over. And that's what has happened. And we've had several teachers. I know of teachers who have interviewed right now at Nottoway. My friend's the superintendent of Nottoway. We talk. And I wish them well. I don't want to hold anyone back who wants to make that decision. But when the decision's in a poor economy and you're feeding your family too as a teacher, you have to make some decisions for your family as well. And I don't call them selfish or anything. You have to take care of your family as well as our kids here in Mecklenburg. So the summary, this budget may seem radical to some. If you've seen my budget presentation over the last few years, except for the teacher increase where we asked for $900,000, all for that teacher increase, we've asked for very little to nothing. We've asked for the bus lease. And the Board of Supervisors did give us that bus lease as well. But we haven't asked much because we have understood the economic times. We have understood everyone's getting hurt. But now it's 5, 6 years later, we're still hurt. And now our children are hurting. We have to get back in the game. Being 133rd and 135th is not something to be proud of. The same people who look for economic development and where are they going to put these new factories, they look at the data. They look at who's investing in the schools, who's going to have a workforce that's ready. They look at that before they even come and make the first contact with a county administrator. And that's not a good sign that we're advertising. The alternative is risk of instructional quality. We face sequestration reductions for the next 8 years. What that means is federal funding. If we all watch the news, we're not getting any increase in federal funding, we're going to be getting less, which means some of the positions we currently fund with federal dollars, or the things that we fund like Accelerated Reader, if we're going to continue those people or those programs that are working, then someone has to pick up the tab. And it doesn't look like the federal government, and it doesn't look like the state of Virginia. Health insurance costs are not likely to decline in the upcoming years with the federal health care reform. VRS increases are expected to continue, like I said earlier, for the next 6 years. Unfunded mandates will likely to continue, and we will be expected to continue to provide services to our students with enthusiasm and continued concern for their safety and high performance. And upcoming, the school board will have a work session to consider this proposal, and will stay tuned to changes in state and federal forecasts. The school board will make revisions to this proposal and will submit their adopted budget to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. I hate to be the doom and gloom one, but you got to present the facts, and these are the facts that address us and that we have to look at. Also in the school board's packet, and will be online, will be the full line item budget, so you will be able to see what last year's budget was, what the current proposed budget is, and what the difference is by every line item. Now, you may not understand all of that, but again, you're welcome, just as school board members are. Please call, please email me, and we will answer your questions if you have questions about the line item budget. It is a like 26 or 27-page document, so. Are there any questions at this point? Are you all exhausted?
We're exhausted.
No one has any questions?
Going over this at our work.
Yes, ma'am, we'll go over it and, like we always do, line by line and item by item. We sure will. Unless the board has a problem with it, I think we need to take a 5-minute recess real quick. If y'all don't mind, for everybody to stretch your legs just a second.